afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. We'll be focusing on new features for Redline Takeoff and looking at some new roof, wall, and stamp tools in addition to all the other fantastic tools already available in Redline Takeoff. I'm Holly Gibson, Senior Product Specialist here at UDA Technologies.
Hi everyone, I'm Jordan Davis, also Senior Product Specialist here at UDA Technologies, and we are really excited to show you really what we're bringing to the table in the newest additions to Takeoff.
We are. So today we'll be really highlighting some of the newest tools that we've added for Redline Takeoff. So some of the things that we've done are go in and really create a new calibration sequence designed to get you started with your takeoffs faster and easier than ever. Added new tools for measuring your area for roofs. So we'll be looking at how to enter the pitch, how to get accurate roof measurements. We'll be looking at some of the new wall area tools and wall volume tools that have been added that allow you to quickly do one or two-sided walls and determine the surface area there, as well as a brand new stamp count tool. So we'll be looking at that along with some of the other things that Redline, of course, already does exceptionally well for you in terms of those takeoff measurements, things like your linear measurements, your square footage, your counts for all sorts of things throughout the plan. And really focusing on just how fast and easy it is to get set up.
For those of you who are just joining us, or for those of you who have never actually been a part of the UDA Technologies webinar experience before, welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. I want to direct your attention to the GoToWebinar panel. Our colleague Sydney Dorsey is standing by. She's going to be highlighting questions that you have and that you can send in to us. If you look at the panel, there's a space for questions. We really love to run an interactive webinar. So as we're working through highlighting all of the new additions and features today, send us in questions that you might have about using the Redline Takeoff tools, how you might actually implement them into your own process and business, and really let us know what you're more interested in learning about. We'd love to answer your questions as we move through today.
We absolutely would. We'd love to hear from you. And one of the things that we've heard from our customers over the years, as we look at ConstructionOnline, really is an industry-leading tool. At this point, it's serving over 750,000 of you guys all over the world. And one of the things that we hear is, we really love ConstructionOnline, but what would be really great is if we could start even earlier in the process, if it really had everything under one roof. So that it does estimating, that it has all of the project management tools, but maybe still using something else for takeoff, or maybe not even using anything for digital takeoff just yet. And so we're really excited with the latest, not only the latest tools, but just really with Takeoff being the latest addition to ConstructionOnline, as something that really kind of closes that circle in project planning and project management, for you and your team. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump in and start taking a look at Takeoff and really how to get started. Jordan, I know this is something that we've talked about. We both enjoy, showing clients and helping people get started with, because it really is such an easy process.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, we've kind of taken a shortcut. We've uploaded and walked through a few of the steps for actually adding in plans, but it couldn't be easier. If you're looking to get started with Takeoff, you're actually going to find it directly inside of the project. You can see we've selected the Takeoff tab here. Each project has its own plan room built in. And this extends backwards to, or really also takes into account Takeoff as well. And adding plans is ridiculously easy. You can actually drag and drop the plan sets onto the page and let Redline handle the rest. It's going to move through and quickly scan for page numbers to go ahead and start building out the order of pages, and really for later on tracking things like revisions. But especially for Takeoff, it's also going to scan things like the sheet titles, which is especially helpful as you're working through your different plan sets to really drill down and focus in on what you need to be doing as you work through the plans.
Exactly. And, if you're already using the Redline Plan Room, or if you haven't started using that yet, you definitely should. It's a wonderful tool to use, so easy to get set up. And if you already have your plans in the plan room, the great thing here is that there's nothing special that you have to do to get them into your Takeoff tool. So once you activate Takeoff in your account, those same sheets will automatically be loaded into your takeoff area. And so really the only thing for us to do is select a sheet and go ahead and start measuring. So we'll go ahead and open up our first page here. So this plan set has a couple of sheets for elevations, a couple of sheets for floor plans. We'll be focusing on this sheet first, just because it does have a roof area that we can go ahead and measure. Now, I see a great question coming in already from the audience, just asking, will the calibration be separate for each page or each sheet? And it will. We've seen with those large plan sets that it's not uncommon for each sheet to have sometimes different scales, especially those detail sheets. So the calibration is something that is set for each sheet individually at this time. And that's really going to be our first step. So the first thing we'll want to do is go ahead and set the calibration. And you'll notice that, Redline Takeoff is set up to keep you on track and make sure that you know the exact thing you need to do next. Really, everything else is blocked off for us. We can only set the calibration because we really can't start measuring until we know the scale. So one of the things I usually recommend from a calibration standpoint is to find the longest known measurement on the page. Now, this sheet does have a few different drawings on it, but they're all set to the same scale, so each drawing is kind of telling me what the scale is here. And what I'm going to do is find one of the longest known measurements. So we'll go ahead and use this one here. So I'll select to set my calibration, kind of zoom in just a little bit so we can fine tune. And I'll click and just go ahead and draw my line. Now that I've got that, we really want to do some slight adjustments. I'm going to just make the line a little bit thinner so that I can make sure that I'm just being as accurate as possible. And I can see that this is 24 feet 1 inch. So when I'm happy with my placement, I'll go ahead and just type that in to my calibration here. And that's it. Really, we'll just go ahead and hit next step. And the tool will guide us on our path really to getting started. And our next step is going to be to create a group. Now let's talk, Jordan, a little bit about how takeoff measurements are organized within Redline Takeoff.
Absolutely. So for those of you who have joined in on earlier webinars for the Takeoff series, we talked about groups, and we really detailed out from a takeoff perspective, perhaps matching groups to something like an estimate structure later on. Now, you don't have to do that, but really when we're looking at building out groups for Redline Takeoff, we're really just taking this and we're using it as a way to organize or keep our measurements as we work through the drawing grouped together in one place. That way, if we wanted to move and look around on this page for roof measurements, or maybe later on we wanted to look at other types of measurements on the page, we could quickly find it just by drilling down into our groups. Mm-hmm. Again, you don't have to use the groups, but we highly recommend that you do, just to keep things organized.
Yeah, one thing that the groups really play a role in as well is how that data is exported. So usually I tell people, think about how you want your end results or your report to look when you export your takeoffs out, because the group structure that you create is really going to kind of guide what your report looks like. So there's no right or wrong way to do it, but most people I talk to do have kind of a certain way that they like to group things. An easy path to follow is, to create those groups based on how you would normally do your estimate, so that everything's organized, and when it's time to put together some of that costing information, you have it really already laid out in the same way that you would for your estimate. Now, our last step, I've created a group just called Roof Measurements here, and I'm going to now start a new takeoff. Now, each takeoff is going to be a certain measurement type. So within my roof measurement section, I might measure the area of the roof here. I may need to measure linear around the perimeter of the roof. We may need to measure some of the ridges or valleys, along the roof there. So there are different tools that can really help you with that. We're going to start with, we'll just call this roof section 1. We're going to start by using the brand new roof tool, which is going to be all the way there at the bottom of our list. And what this is an surface area measuring tool. So that's really going to be our output, is an area number that is going to take into account the pitch or slope of our roof. So in this case, we are at 612. And really the only thing left to do, if we want to put in a short description, I can do that and start measuring. Now, there are different shape tools that you can start with. Really, I recommend this. The polygon is going to be great for tracing, which you're normally going to need to do on a roof. Those are rarely going to just be a flat square. So we'll start with this tracing tool. I'll hit start measuring, and we'll just choose which section we want to measure out. So I'm going to start here at this corner. And maybe just zoom in a little bit here. And when we're done, we'll double click. Now you can see that I probably need to fine tune this a little bit. So I'm going to come in and again make my line just a little bit thinner and adjust the edges here just to get a little more accurate. And we'll also go ahead and change the color on this as well. And that's it. So now with that measurement, it's giving me a roof area, so I can see that this section, I can see the measurement for this section. We'll go ahead and close that out. And then really I would just repeat for each section on the roof. Sometimes you'll see different slopes, of course, so you can adjust that with each takeoff. So if you needed to do sections of the roof that were a different pitch than others, you would want to create a separate takeoff. Otherwise, you can keep adding sections in just by choosing the add more measurements option and then coming in and tracing out that way.
Yeah, I think the key here is that it's not as complicated as I think people would expect it to be, actually. So I have been really impressed with the output of this tool to date. Now, something that we were looking at before the webinar started, Holly, was just adjusting the actual pitch measurements, just to play around with it and really show, oh look, this actually does have an impact, right?
Yeah, so you can see as I change the pitch here, you'll notice my numbers start to shift. So normally that's going to give us a larger number than a flat surface measurement would. And so just taking into account these calculations allows you to get a bit of a more accurate measurement. So I actually had a conversation with someone earlier this week, and we were looking at this tool, and they said, man, well, what I'm doing now is just kind of ballparking the area and then adding on just a little bit to that and hoping that's close enough. Which, sometimes is an okay way of doing things, but we really want to do things as accurately as possible. And so this allows you to get exceptionally accurate measurements, even on a sloped surface like your roof. Now we have another great question coming in from someone who's really asking, can you scroll around on the page while you're in the middle of measuring? And that's actually something else new that will be fun for us to look at today. You notice as I'm going through measuring, sometimes you do need to zoom in a little bit to get the needed detail. While you're measuring, if you do need to scroll or pan around, you can actually use both the wheel on the mouse to scroll or zoom in and out, and you can also use the arrow keys on your keyboard to move the sheet around. So if you hold down your control key and use those arrow keys, you'll be able to adjust even while you're measuring, which is really nice for being able to fine-tune that measurement. So we'll go ahead and add one more here. And again, just any fine tuning that you want to do. You can see how fast it is just to start to put these measurements and this information together. And we can, even move around there as well. So. And that's it. It really, couldn't be easier to start doing that. Now, the other thing that is a new tool that we're introducing that's really exceptionally handy for roof measurements is a pitched linear tool. So what we've been focusing on here are the area-based measurements, which you'll want to do, normally for your entire roof. But sometimes if you are measuring out, perhaps framing or other roof materials, we may want to do just a linear measurement, say maybe of this a ridge or a valley. You can do the same thing that we're doing here with the area tool by using the pitched linear tool. So that'll just help us take those straight line measurements, add a pitch there, and then be able to get a more accurate measurement that way.
Now, a key point here is you're actually adding a new takeoff, right, Holly? So this is something that is going to be a little different than what we were measuring in terms of area. The takeoff itself actually contains the type of measurement that we're working on. It's a pretty key concept for working instead of Redline takeoff. But once you once that's kind of understood, I found that people kind of understand the concept and it makes a lot of sense. Like, oh, okay, so we're switching gears here. We're going to take this measurement and use it in a different way than maybe what we were using the roof measurement for.
Mm-hmm. Now, in this case, I'm going to do some linear measurements or lines. Now, you'll notice that I've added my pitch as well, so we've accounted for that. And with the linear measuring tools, you can use the ruler tool to draw a single straight line and get a measurement, or you can use your line segment tool to create effectively multiple line segments within the same measurement. The end result is going to be a linear measurement there. So we'll go ahead and use the segment, hit start measuring, and maybe we want to measure from here to here. And then we'll do, let's see, another one. Now, I did have someone ask, okay, so you hold down control and do what? So if you hold down control and then use your arrow keys on the keyboard, you'll be able to, even while your measuring tool is active, you'll still be able to move the sheet around to do some of that fine tuning. So we'll just move this one down a bit so we can take this next measurement. And then when we're finished, we'll just go ahead and double click. Again, so now we have a pitched linear measurement, and we can keep adding to this section if we need to as well. And that's it. So super easy to do. I mean, really, it's just now a matter of repeating. Often on roofs as well, you might want to use a pitch linear to, sometimes measure outside lines for things like the fascia. You might want to use a regular, perimeter tool just to measure the outside linear, kind of straight linear footage of the outline here. But a lot of great tools that come into play when you're specifically trying to do measurements for your roof, along with, of course, the other tools already available in Takeoff. Now, some of the other new things that we've added are tools that are specifically helpful for wall measurements. So we'll actually go ahead and switch over to a different sheet and take a look at those as well. And while I'm doing that, I know, Jordan, you had a great question from a client earlier this week to know, would these roof measuring tools work with something like a aerial view from like a Google map? And they absolutely will. So that is definitely something you can do. And in fact, Redline Takeoff does integrate with Google Maps, so you can actually import that in directly. You don't even have to go anywhere else to save it. You can search for your address, find the aerial view that you want, import that directly in, and then go in and do some measurements on it. So it's a really a nice way to use those roofing tools as well.
Yeah, and this is better than a screenshot as well, because we're actually tapping into the Google Maps API to actually pull a very, very high quality, high resolution image into Redline, which is going to help you, one, make sure that your measurements are much more accurate, and two, make sure that you're getting a really clear and sharp image to work with. If you haven't tried this before, you should give it a shot. It is a really, really high resolution image.
It is. It's a great way to use the tool. Now, I've shifted over to a different plan so we can take a look at a couple of the new wall tools. So we'll actually just start by doing the same thing we did a moment ago. We're going to find a longer known measurement and go ahead and set our calibration. So I'm going to use this line here, and we'll go ahead and get that going. And let's see, I think this is going to be 21.5.
Nice.
And we're all set. Okay, so we've got a couple of new tools that we wanted to show, kind of looking at how we might measure walls. Now, there are, of course, already linear foot measuring tools built in, so very often you'll be using those. But for this, we're going to look at measuring something like, I don't know, maybe we want to use this for paint or drywall would be a good one here. Anywhere where we're looking to get the actual surface area of the wall, and not so much just a measurement of how long the wall is, but we need to get the flat surface area. So one of the new tools is the wall surface area tool, and that's exactly what that's designed to give us. So we'll go ahead and measure some of those on the first floor. And then just choose the shape that we want to use. So in this case, we'll just use the square tool, or the rectangle tool there. You can choose if you want to do a wall with one side or two sides in terms of how this is being measured. And then you would enter in the wall height. So we're going to say these are going to be 9 feet tall. Now, someone did ask me recently, okay, well, Holly, why would I ever have a one-sided wall? Like, is there such a thing? But there is not, but there is, because, sometimes, especially if we're measuring like an outside wall here, the material that you need to build the inside, like a drywall, is not the same as what you'd need. So you wouldn't always need that to be two-sided, whereas some of the interior walls that you see, you might want to save a little bit of time and measure those lines out with two sides accounted for. That way it just saves some of the work that you'd be doing. So that's really the intent there. So let's see, we'll scroll out a little bit and just pretend like we're going to just measure out this entire area here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that interior section, just drag, let it go, and now I can see that I have a wall surface area inside this giant room of 1,073 square feet. If we did choose two-sided, you'll notice that it just basically doubles that measurement for you. So again, cutting down on the amount of time that you would need to spend there.
Now, of course, this is a lo-fi example, or like a pretty rough example. This tool will also work again for the polygon or segment tool, so you can actually go through this entire very detailed plan set and measure out pretty much a contiguous line, if you think about it, all the way through the entire plan set. Or you could continue to add measurements into this section here and really come up with a cumulative surface area for the entire first floor, or a cumulative surface area for the entirety of the project.
Yeah, so here I've just used the polygon or tracing tool to trace out this room. Now I do still have my line pretty thin, so we'll make that a little thicker so you can see. We'll close that, and really we can just keep adding more measurements until we're happy with the surface area that we've chosen. The segments are really nice for some of these short little interior sections here. You just point and click, and you can really keep adding as much to this takeoff or creating additional takeoffs with the wall measurement tool here. Now there's another new tool for walls available as well, which is the wall volume tool. So what that's designed to do is give us a little bit more. So if we had a wall that was going to be maybe like here in the basement, maybe this is going to be a poured concrete wall. So rather than kind of a frame construction, we really needed to calculate a volume of concrete. What you'd be able to do is use the new wall volume tool to find that volume or find that measurement. Just like the other types of takeoff, getting started is easy. We're just going to give this a name. We'll choose a color, so I'll do this one in green, and then just choose the tool that we want to use in terms of tracing this out. We'll go back to the rectangle here. I think I can probably grab this whole thing at once. And then we'll say, again, how high is the wall going to be? So these will be 8.5 feet tall. But in this case, we also are going to add kind of a depth or thickness. So we'll say that this is going to be, I don't know, I'm going to go with 8 inches. We'll go with it's going to be 8 inches deep. I don't know if that's right. You guys are more experts on that than me, but we'll give it a shot. So in this case, I'm going to get a volume measurement here. And I can add this to an existing group, or I can just, add it to the kind of the top level for my measurements. We'll go ahead and choose Start Measuring, and then I will just click and draw. Now, you notice it's not filling up the entire volume. I can, again, make this line a little bit thicker, but because I've already entered those measurements, I don't really need to worry about it. It's giving me a measurement for cubic yards, taking into account an 8-foot height, an 8-inch thickness or depth, and you'll see that it also will display my area and linear measurements for me here in case we need to go back and reference those as well. And that's it. Again, super easy as far as putting this together. And in the end, you get a great output report based on the measurements that you've done, and fast, easy, accurate. Now, I know we have had another question come in from the audience really wanting to know, well, what about what about things like mechanical or HVAC? What types of things can be used? And certainly the count and stamp count tools can be used for all sorts of things. So I've been working with clients the last couple of months getting started with Takeoff, and I've been continuously impressed with the different uses that people continue to get out of it and the different things that they're measuring. But certainly the new stamp count tool really was designed for you to be able to do some of the measurements for things like mechanical, HVAC, electrical, and be able to use not only counts, but specific shapes to go along with that, just to give you a better visual reference on the plan.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had the count tool available in Takeoff since it launched a couple of weeks, or actually, what was it, roughly a month and a half ago, 2 months ago at this point? Mm-hmm. But we really wanted to give a better visual on what some of the stamps or what some of the counts on page actually were referencing or for, without needing to select the count and then look and see, well, what was this titled? So I think our team has done a really great job of listing out a pretty robust and extensive set of stamps to start. I know, Holly, you mentioned HVAC, mechanical, and electrical stamps, so we've also included some stamps for plumbing as well. There are a lot of different options. We're going to take a look at a few of them now as we, just for example, start to move through. Now, to actually start using the stamp tool, all you have to do is change the measurement type to the stamp count, which does exactly what it sounds like it does. It lets you not just start counting on the page, but use a specific icon or stamp to represent the count that you've started.
Yeah, so here maybe we want to do this type of outlet. We would just choose that shape. Now you can choose other stamps. So within the electrical set, there are others for you to choose from. There's also going to be, maybe like an HVAC set that you want to use. You can choose those shapes. Same thing for plumbing. So you've got some different things that you can choose from here. We've created an electrical group, so we'll go ahead and start just by using this receptacle outlet. And we'll give this a different color. So these are going to be orange for us. And we'll just call this outlets. So we'll just choose Start Measuring. Now the difference here is I'm not, of course, going to be drawing any lines. I'm just going to be stamping. So really we would go through and start to just stamp out where we wanted those outlets to go. So maybe we want one here, 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 here. So very, very easy to do. When we are done, we'll just go ahead and double click, or you can choose Finish Count right here. And that's really it. So we can call this, first floor outlets. We may want to go ahead and assign a trade here. Could put in a description if I wanted to. We'll go ahead and close that out. So really, again, couldn't be easier. Now, if we want to move some things around, or maybe if we wanted to, made those a little bit bigger than I intended. If we wanted to.
Yeah, some people have asked, or at least that I've worked with, what does this slider bar do? Well, it adjusts the scale. So if the stamps are far too large for your taste, or really they're not large enough for some people, that you can actually change the scale. So you can, make it a little easier to see certain things on the page.
Yeah. Now the great thing here is that if you, just like with the other tools, if we wanted to add more measurements to this, we could. Or if we're stamping these out and we just want to move the sheet around a little bit, once we've clicked finish, you'll notice my bar still remains up here. So I can actually go ahead and just hit resume count and just keep stamping out and counting in other, areas of this sheet. So again, super easy to do. We'll go ahead and finish that up, close this, and select finish measuring. So it really just goes ahead and measures that out for us, tells us what it was we were counting, and it's going to work the same way with the other stamp types. Now, if you need to do, we've got some really great questions coming in. One is, can you import your own stamps? So the answer to that is not just yet, but that is something that we have planned. If there is a set that you'd really like to see us add next, because we are, kind of continuously adding to these on pretty much a weekly basis at this point, shoot me an email after this, or just chat us over what you'd like to see, and I'll make sure to take a look at that for you. Also have a great question about, can you do multiple counts of different objects on the same page? And you definitely can. So if I needed to start measuring a different object at this point, we would just do, maybe some sort of fixture or something like that, or whatever it is that we were wanting to count. Choose a different symbol and go ahead and start measuring right on the same sheet. So you can really just keep going with this as much as you need, which is one thing that's really nice about having the different shapes with this stamp, I think, is that, the count tool is wonderful. It's just really small dots or squares or diamonds, just different little shapes that you can use. And those are nice because they're really subtle. But if you're needing to measure out something where you're probably going to do a lot of counting on one sheet and need to be able to really distinguish what certain things are, then the stamps are a really great way to do that.
And if we're really wanting to distinguish or control visibility, something that I like to point people to is using the layers function, actually, to really control. Perhaps you'll have a layer set up for measuring or all of the electrical stamps, and then you'll turn that layer off so you can transition over to measuring maybe the mechanical stuff, stamps at this point, just to really control what's visible on the page as you're going through and counting, measuring, whatever it might be. It helps keep the same page clean and helps you continue to use the page for additional measurements moving forward.
Yeah, it really does. So let's say that we wanted to do maybe a plumbing takeoff on this same sheet. What the layers allow me to do is I can create a new layer, turn off the first one that I was working on, and so I've effectively got a blank slate here. None of my measurements are actually gone. They're all we'll still see them lined up here, but they disappear off the sheet with the use of the layers, which is, again, really nice if you're going to be measuring out a lot of things. I mean, it's rare that you're only going to do just one thing. I mean, in most cases, there'll be a lot that you need to account for with these projects, and so the layers really give you a way to do a lot on a single sheet without cluttering up the sheet too much. Now, in addition to the new tools, this would be a great time as well just to review some of the other tools that are available, which are really useful along, just about every trade, and, for general contractors as well, kind of looking to do a takeoff. So you can do things like, again, area measurements. And so what this would allow us to do is just measure out the area of a room or a space. So maybe we'll just call this first floor common areas. And again, just assign a color, choose the tool that we want to use. Here we'll just choose this polygon, go ahead and start measuring. And this is really just going to give us an area or square footage measurement of the space that we highlight or trace here.
Yeah, we could use this for digitally capturing out the area that we need for maybe the hardwood floors. We could use it to measure out areas for total carpeted areas, tile. We can see these items are labeled in the actual plans now, but the real advantage here is being able to extract that information from the page and then use it in something like a report output or later on inside of your estimate.
Exactly, and you can see that you can really trace around different areas as well, so I can really just keep going with this. But maybe we want to just measure half the room. So again, it's really completely up to you. One thing that people will ask is, what about keeping your lines straight? So in addition to using some of the zoom and fine-tuning of the thickness of the stroke that you're working with, if you hold down your shift key while you are tracing, it will keep your angles right. So it'll keep you at 90-degree angles when you're making turns, which is again really nice to have a little help with doing that for sure.
And also we were fine-tuning the area measurements for the roof tool earlier, but the other area tools work the same as well. You can use the points to adjust and really fine-tune your measurements as well.
You can. Now you can also as well for the area measurements add a height, then it will go ahead and give you a volume, but it's really giving you at that point the volume for the entire space that you've measured. So typically that's wouldn't be used in with a room. In some cases you might need that measurement for like HVAC or mechanical work to kind of need to know that sort of thing. So know that is something that you can do when you are creating these. So we'll add in some more measurements. Again, super easy just to keep going. I'm going to make this one a different color here. And just trace that out as well. Other tools that are available would be your perimeter tool. So these work very similar to those area tools we were just using, but the output that you get, kind of that primary measurement for this object is going to be a linear foot perimeter of the shape as opposed to the area inside. So just as easy to use and set up, but just measuring something different.
Yeah, once you learn how to use a few of the different shape tools, you really learn how to use all of them at the same time. Like Holly, you were mentioning using the tool to measure volume of a space, and there is actually a designated tool for volume as well that you could use to measure and capture exactly that information.
That's right. So you have area, perimeter, linear, volume as well. So if we wanted that to be our primary, and that's really kind of the difference with some of these as well, is like the tool that you choose is going to be that primary measurement. So when you're exporting out into reports, and when we're looking at integrating this Takeoff tool into our estimating tools, which is really our planned next move here. That's really what our team is hard at work on here. In the back end here at UDA is really working on linking these takeoffs that you're creating directly into your estimates in ConstructionOnline. But we do need a primary measurement, so we need to know what your intent was when you created the shape, and so that's where this comes in. In this case, volume is going to be primary. So we'll just call this pantry volume. Trace that out. Now, in this case, we do need a height, so we'll say again, these are 9 feet. Do a quick trace here on the pantry. And the measurement that we get is going to be volume based as opposed to area based. Now, another great question that we had is, what if I'm in a different country and I don't want cubic yards, I don't want feet and inches, what about that? But you can go into the settings for, so it's going to be located under your information menu here, and choose things like your resolution and rotation, background color for your sheets. But especially relevant here is imperial or metric units of measurement. So if you do prefer a metric unit of measurement, or you live in a place where, of course that's the standard in much of the world, then you'll want to choose that metric type, and then that will convert over for you, and all of your measurements will be based in meters as opposed to feet and inches.
It's pretty straightforward.
Definitely. Just taking a run through these questions to make sure that we hopefully haven't missed anything for you guys. Now, I know one of the things that it looks like several people have had questions about are just really some of the output and reports that you can do here. So we'll close out this and come back really to our main Takeoff section here. You do have a number of report options. So the reports here in the top section are going to be PDF-based reports effectively. So one that's new that we've added is this measurement by takeoff report. It really takes all of the known dimensions that we've measured and gives them to you. You can filter this down by group, or you can choose to go ahead and do all of them. We'll just let the report run everything since we only have a few measurements here. And this is really going to be a report that's showing me the measurements that I've done on this sheet. So it's going by sheet. And give me a breakdown of all the measurements, not just my primary measurement type, but really all of the known measurements associated with the drawings I've created. You can also do a quick takeoff summary or a takeoff quantity report, or you can choose to do an export to Excel, which is really going to just, again, allow you to export that same information out just more in an Excel layout. So we'll go ahead and actually move over to this sheet for that. You can choose to include a description column or sheet numbers. So we'll just go ahead and export that. And you can see that it just downloads immediately. We can open up the file. And that's it. So you can see these groups here that I've created, my drywall, my electrical. When you think about how you want to put your groups together within your takeoff, this is really what you want to think about, is what do I want, the report or output to get. So anything that's in a group, then your takeoffs will be listed along with the quantity and unit there, and any descriptive information you've entered.
Now that's something that we didn't touch on while we were working through the different measurement objects today, but each takeoff object itself can have its own description, which could be useful for signaling someone else as they're looking at this information, or just notes for yourself as to what you were intending to communicate to yourself later on. To add a measurement, all you'd really need to do is, or to add a description to any of the different takeoff objects, all you have to do is just fill that information out, and that would show up in the report. It's going to be available as a panel on the right sidebar for each one of the measurements.
So if we jump, did not leave the sheet open, but if we jump back in, let's take a look. So if we drill in perhaps in one of our groups here, and then drill into maybe one of our measurements. Now you can see this one I did give a name, did not give a description, but you do have the option to do that really on any of the measurements that you've created here. Now you'll notice that the export we just did had a little bit more information. In this case, it's a very similar export, but it does include those additional known measurement types. So it'll go ahead and export those out for you. And then really from here, if you kind of look at how these are going to be grouped together, it's really just in how you've set it up. So it really just follows what you've set and allows you to get those measurements right out.
Yeah, this is a key for why, one, we recommend that you set up groups when you're first starting to use Redline Takeoff, but also this is the point at which I will start to encourage people to think about how they're going to be pulling the information out of the system to use in their estimates, or really when they're looking at material requirements for the project, whatever it might be. Make sure that you're thinking ahead to how you're structuring out your groups. It's going to make it a lot easier to work with the different measurements that you've exported or extracted from Redline Takeoff, both now and in the future.
Mm-hmm. It does. Now, I see a great question, just switching gears a little bit. Someone asked, does it work with like an Apple iPad Pro and a pencil? And the answer is, it does. That's one of the great sort of advantages to using a system that's an entirely web-based system, and that's something that's really unique about Redline Takeoff is it isn't a desktop-based program. It's not a cloud-based program in the sense of taking a desktop software and just putting it on a cloud. It's really web-based, built web-based from the ground up, and with that is designed to not only give you access from anywhere, but give you some of those capabilities when you're working on tablets. My device of choice is Surface Pro. If you're using that or like an iPad Pro, it is going to work with those touch devices. Now, just like anything else you might do on your touch device, you have to, kind of take into account the size of screen that you're working with. The great thing about some of these newer tablets, or especially some of these bigger tablets, though, is that you do get a nice amount of screen space. And I've not used the iPad Pro a ton, but I use the Surface Pro all the time, and I love the sensitivity of the screen. It just works really well. So you do have the flexibility to use it on those types of devices, and you also have, of course, the flexibility to really access it from anywhere. A common other question that I get, and I see that one of you has the same question here today as well, is, can we do the takeoff and share what the actual takeoff looks like, or what the actual sheet looks like? So not just like an export, but actually, like a snapshot of the sheet with the measurements showing. And you can do that as well. So you can come in and share the sheet either by email or print it up. And the marks that you've made here are going to print along with the measurements that you see in the center. You can also come into your sheet menu and use the download option here, which will just download a PDF of this sheet with the marks on it. So a lot that you can do there from a sharing perspective as well.
And that is going to take into account the layers as well. So if you wanted to turn on or off different counts while still maintaining the different perimeter and area measurements, you can absolutely do that. So you can have different versions of the same sheet with different information on it, without needing to create multiple copies of the same sheet over and over again.
Exactly. And lastly, it looks like as we wrap up, we'll kind of answer a common question. Looks like a couple of you guys have today, and certainly a common one that we get on these webinars is, okay, how can I get this in my account? I see the takeoff, how can I get it added on? And so it really is something that you can just call us up. We can talk to you about which users you need. So with the takeoff, you are able to add that functionality on for specific users within your account. So just give us a call. We'll talk about how to get you set up. And really, once we turn it on, you'll have access to it immediately. So it's not something that you have to wait a long time on or anything like that. You can be up and going with this really quickly. So if it's something that you want to have active in your account, feel free to just give us a call or send over an email, and we'd be happy to help you out with that, or anything else for that matter. So we have added in, as we wrap up today, additional training sessions. So we hope that you've enjoyed and learned a lot in this session today. We do have additional sessions coming up next week. So we'll be looking at first how to quickly set up ConstructionSuite users to work remotely. So next week on Tuesday, we'll have a session or webinar focusing on, for those of you who may be using our ConstructionSuite desktop software, how to be able to access that from anywhere, how to get set up to work remotely. We know that's something a lot of our customers have let us know that they're facing, and really trying to kind of work out what's the best approach for a remote team. So we've got some great suggestions there. We'll also be having a session on what's new for spring 2020. So we'll be showing you some of the new tools that we've added to ConstructionOnline recently, like advanced change orders with multiple lines and the ability to link to multiple places on your estimate, or a brand new tool called checklists, classification-based markups in your estimate. In your estimates, color coding on your schedules, new reports that we've added in. So a lot of great things to take a look at there. And then on April 14th, we'll have a session covering or a class really covering how to set up your subcontractors to get on board with TeamLink. So how to set up their portal, how to manage the process of inviting them to projects, how to control what they're able to see. So a lot of great information coming up here.
Yeah, I can almost guarantee, just looking at the people attending today, that this last webinar is going to be a really, really helpful topic. You all should register for this. We're going to be sharing really our experience with years and years and years. At least a decade, if not more, of experience working with contractors here in the United States and abroad, and what they found that works really well in terms of setting up their projects for success, in terms of getting subcontractors on board with using ConstructionOnline. This tends to be a bit of a struggle for some companies that I've worked with, but it doesn't have to be. We're going to be sharing a lot of tips and tricks to really help you make this happen, and really make it an easy process for you and for your subcontractors to work together towards finishing a project on time, under budget, everything that we really aim for. And now's the best time to start working on this seriously. If you're in a state, or if you're in a situation where your projects have been halted either by your own choice or by the government's, it's time now to prepare for when you're ready to start work again, and we're excited to work with you as we move forward.
Yeah, that's right. And as always, we are accommodating and trying to add as many classes and trainings on as we can. A couple of quick reminders on that. One, we do offer one-on-one training. So for any of you that would like to have a one-on-one walkthrough maybe of the new Takeoff tools, or set up a time to just work with one of us from a training perspective, we're happy to do that with you and your team. If there are classes you'd like to see us offer, if you know, well, hey, I'm sure if I'm wondering this, other people would want to hear about the same topic, send that over as well. We'd love to hear from you on the classes that you'd find most helpful. Until next time, though, we have definitely enjoyed having all of you here with us today. It's great to see so many of you attending and really expanding what you're doing with ConstructionOnline and Redline, and we'll hope to see you at some of our classes next week. Thanks so much.
Yeah, again, thank you all for joining. It's so good to see that you all are doing well, and thank you again for the time. We'll see you soon.